All right, I am not sure if I'm going to go to the whiteboard or not on this episode. We're going to talk about leadership, specifically leadership in the context of meetings. And how do you run more effective meetings? Whether these are customer-facing meetings, like an event that you might host on behalf of your end users or your user group, or your participation in an event that you might go to, and we're in that event season. I'll be speaking at Learning 2024 here in a couple of weeks, or even looking at something like a sales kickoff. How does that change your approach when you start thinking about meetings and events? We'll also talk a bit about internal meetings, some of those meetings that you have maybe on a weekly basis with your team, or a monthly basis with your larger team, or maybe on a quarterly basis with the entire organization, or, as many of you are working through the process of getting ready for right now, your sales kickoff or global kickoff events. So why don't we get to it? As you've heard the tone of the podcast shift over the course of the past couple of months, there's a much stronger focus on leadership. I firmly believe leadership is how we move forward. That's my definition of leadership. I believe that starts with self. Once you've demonstrated an ability to lead self well, you've earned the right to lead another person. And when you can demonstrate the ability to lead another person, you earn the right to lead teams, and then ultimately lead teams of teams leading in organizations. And if you're ever failing at any of those things, my recommendation is take a look at self first. What's your level of self-awareness that you're bringing to the situation? What's the level of self-confidence? Is self-confidence getting in the way and helping you create poor behaviors? Or is self-worth getting in the way and you start to feel this level of imposter syndrome? But we're not talking about leadership today in that context. We're going to talk about it in the context of events and meetings. So what's a meeting? Okay, a meeting is going to be any interaction that you have with another person. Any interaction that you have with another person. Now, some meetings are really small, one-on-ones. Some meetings are really big. You can have a couple of thousand people there. My preference, when we're talking about either internal or external customers, is that we keep those meetings relatively small. And the reason why I like the relatively small ones is because you get a chance to interact with each other directly, build really strong relationships, have deep conversations. So let's talk about those meetings. The first thing that I recommend, and you've seen this before in the simplifying communication, recommend that you go in with a call plan. Know who is going to be there, anticipate what their objectives are, know what your objectives are, and know what the desired next steps are. What are the specific things you expect people to do as a result of the meeting? This applies whether we're talking about customer meetings, like a call plan, or internal meetings. And you've heard me talk about this before. I think of customers in the context of both internal and external. Once you've got a plan and you have an understanding of what those desired next steps are, what your general objectives are, you can design for success. You can design backward. If you want the next steps at the end of a meeting to be X, Y, and Z, design backward for each of those. Let's say one of the next steps that you want is that a follow-up meeting is scheduled with a couple of other members of an organization. So you design your meeting to achieve that specific result. If you're looking for help on this is one of the things I can do in the context of those guided whiteboard sessions that you've heard me talk about. A guided whiteboard session can be done with a group of people. I would suggest anywhere between 3 and 10, no more than 10, for up to 90 minutes, and we can go through and work backward, design backward from what success is. In this context, we'd be talking about meetings. So a meeting occurs with one or more people. It has a specific set of objectives, both your objectives and the objectives of the person on the other end. And you should design with a view toward achieving next steps. Let's talk about the different types of meetings that exist. And I did a post on this, a couple of videos on LinkedIn about this earlier in the week. There are meetings where decisions are going to be made. So what does a decision-making meeting look like? Well, a decision-making meeting is one where everybody has all of the information. They have the background information. They have the details around what decision is going to be made, what criteria we are going to use to inform that decision, what criteria we're going to use to determine the decision. So we know what the decision is, background information on the decision, and then what criteria we're going to use. You can make a decision with a large group of people. You can make a decision with a small group of people. In each of those meetings, you're going to add a layer of complexity. One type of meeting is a decision-making meeting. Another type of meeting is one where you're conveying detailed information, structured information, and you expect there to be questions. What does that look like? Think of your all teams meetings. Think of your global sales meetings. Think of your weekly functional line area meetings. You're going to be sharing information. You're going to anticipate that there are going to be some questions. These meetings sometimes could include a level of collaboration, but I would suggest that if you're collaborating on a specific decision or a problem to be solved, that you actually use a separate meeting for that kind of environment. So you have meetings where you're looking to convey information and expect that there's going to be some Q&A. And again, those are sales team meetings. Those are all hands meetings. Those can be things like sales kickoff meetings. So we've talked about decision-making meetings. We've talked about meetings where you're there to convey some information and expect there to be Q&A. And then the last kind of meeting, the one that I think actually is the more interesting one, the one that can never be an email, are collaborative meetings. And in collaborative meetings, my expectation is that you're going to collaborate and either solve a problem, work through a problem that's facing the organization that requires cross-team collaboration or internal team collaboration. So work through a problem, use the collective intelligence of the group. You are going to design for a specific experience. Think customer experience, think events, think a campaign that you're getting ready to launch. Or you're going to gain alignment on strategy and tactics to achieve a specific result. So we're going to align on strategy and tactics to achieve a specific goal. Those are the three types of meetings that I'll do with my guided whiteboard sessions. Those are collaborative meetings. There's going to be a high level of engagement across the team. There's an expectation that we're going to use the collective intelligence of the entire team. And if you're in one of those situations where you're hosting a meeting like that and everybody is not engaged, everybody's not involved, then I would question your ability to run that type of meeting. I would ask you to look at a couple of different things. If you're running collaborative meetings and you're not seeing a high level of engagement, ask yourself these questions. Number one, do I have the right people in the room? Do I have the right people in the room? Number two, when I ask a question, am I giving them space to actually answer? Am I listening for the answer, or am I listening to validate a perspective that I want them to have? Do I have the right people in the room? Am I asking questions and listening? And then the third piece is, am I dismissing anybody or ignoring anybody in the meeting? Am I creating an environment for large team or group participation? The reason why I like to use a whiteboard in these meetings, and you'll remember them from back when you were in an office environment, or if you're still in an office environment, you're probably using these today. I like to use this thing. When you see information going up against the whiteboard, whether it's something like a question or a couple of answers, or it's individual steps that you're going through. So we're designing for a specific experience. Again, we work backward and execute forward. You start to feel that come together. You see the information going. You see the information going up on the board. You feel the building of it. And when you feel that building, it starts to create a level of engagement. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Rick, about this. And he had said that one of the interesting things when you turn around and look at the whiteboard, it gives everybody a chance to kind of think and reflect. So using a whiteboard in a guided whiteboard session like I'll do for problem-solving meetings that are focused on designing to achieve a specific result, or meetings to align on strategy and tactics can be really, really powerful. And the advantage of using someone outside of your organization is I don't come into the meeting or the room with biases that would put me in a position where I might dismiss words or dismiss responses that are given. So we've talked about the different types of meetings where information is being conveyed meetings where a decision is going to be made, or meetings where there's a level of collaboration. Now, let's talk about that in the context of events. Depending on what you're trying to accomplish with your event, let's say your sales kickoff, you might have a segment of the meeting that's focused on conveying information. You might have a segment of the meeting, maybe small groups that are focused on collaboration, solve a problem, design for a solution, or organize strategy and tactics to achieve a specific result. So strategy and tactics around a goal. Splitting those up into smaller groups could create a situation where you're actually inspiring your team to design or deploy or develop things that help the business move forward. So we have information, we have collaborative, and then we have a decision-making meeting. At the event, we might have multiple versions of these. You'll see them at events like Learning 2024 that I'm going to, where I am going to host a breakout session focused on getting to the yes. So how do we create alignment inside an organization so that we can get our internal programs funded? In addition to that breakout session, there are going to be keynotes where there's going to be information shared and sent out. There will also be small group panel type discussions around a lunch table. So at an event, you can have multiple types of meetings inside the overall event. And this works whether we're talking about an event for your customers, external customers, or your customers' internal customers. Now, let's talk about the type of meeting that might take place inside your organization. So this is an event for either internal or external customers. These are what might happen inside a collaborative environment. Then we can get into things like our sales team one-on-ones. What does a sales team one-on-one look like? And for me, when I'm leading sales team one-on-one discussions, I've got really three things I'm trying to get a sense for. I want to get a sense for, number one, what's working. Number two, what's not. And number three, where are we stuck? And I'll even do this inside smaller group meetings, but what's working? What's not? Where are we stuck? If I know the answer to those three things, I can determine on the working, we continue those. On the what's not, we may need to stop. And the stuck, we may identify something that we need to start. And you hear this in the context of start, stop, continue in the way that some people will organize and run some events. So in one-on-ones, I really like to focus on that time on understanding what's working, what's not working, and where are we stuck. I do not want to spend any time in those one-on-ones, although sometimes I do, primarily because sometimes that's the expectation. But I do not want to spend any time going through and looking at information that I could review in HubSpot in advance, doing this pipeline review type things. What I'm expecting is my team, the sales reps on my team, are going to lead self well. And they're going to be clear about what's working, what's not, and where are things stuck, so that we stop here, we start here, and we continue there. How does that work when you've got a group of people? Well, I can tell you one of the things that sucks about typical pipeline review meetings, some of these QBRs that might happen. When people are reviewing their business, they're hoping that they don't get called on. They sit there and wait, and they hope that the person before them has a long, drawn-out discussion around what they're working on, what's not working, all of that other stuff, so that they don't get called on. They get to avoid the trap of having the light on them. If you are running meetings where you're in a situation where people are hoping that they don't get called on, then I would challenge you to think a bit differently about how you run the meeting. And if that's a case that you're running into, I would love to have a conversation with you and see if I can help. See if I can help you with some of the design things to improve what those one-on-one meetings look like with your team. So we've talked about large event meetings, both internal and external. We've talked about one-on-ones inside our team. We've talked about the different jobs to be done when it comes to meetings. And ultimately where this falls into place, I believe, is under the context of leadership in three key skills. Skill number one is communication. Skill number two is design. And skill number three is problem solving. Now, we did talk about decision making, which is another skill, but I think the three big ones are problem solving, design, and communication. What problem are we trying to solve with the meeting? What's the specific job to be done? How do we design a scenario where we get to the result, we achieve the result? So that's design. And then how do we communicate effectively inside those meetings? Understanding what our call plan is. And as a reminder, that call plan is who is in the room, their objectives, our objectives, and our desired next steps. And if you have more than 3 next steps in any of those meetings, any of those calls, any of those interactions, I'd suggest that you are probably trying to do too much. It's a lot of information on a Saturday afternoon for a podcast around meetings and communication. I'm going to take this opportunity to promote some of the work that I'm doing. You'll see us focused on 2 specific areas. Both of them are directly related to leadership. The first one is in the context of leadership of self. If you are looking for a community that will help you think different so that you can do different and ultimately be different, who knows that leaders build leaders and knows that that happens through helping each other be successful, check out the Leader Lab. This is a place where we will create space for you to experiment, for you to test, for you to work through the challenges that sometimes are hard to talk about either inside the organization you're a part of, within your family, or just between that 6 inches between both of your ears. So that's the Leader Lab. The second area that I want to promote, and this is one that I'm really excited about, it's taking all of the tools that I've created over the number of years of being in leadership and revenue roles and running my own consulting practice and applying them in the context of helping to make collaborative meetings more effective inside organizations. Whether it's your sales kickoff, it's a team meeting where you're focused on either solving a problem, designing for a solution, or aligning on strategy and tactics to achieve a specific result. Those are the guided whiteboard sessions. You'll see both of those at findmycatalyst.com. Anytime you want to connect with me, that is the best place to go. Go to findmycatalyst.com. You can also connect up with me in any of the Slack channels that we might be a part of. So check out the Leader Lab, check out the guided whiteboard sessions. Please let me know what questions you have when it comes to communication and how you're thinking about improving communication inside your organization. I have one more thing I want to get into before we wrap up, and it's specific to approaching events. How do you approach events? How can you get better at events, either as a participant, someone who's paying to be at the event, or as a vendor, someone who's paying to have your team at the event to interact with others? The first thing I recommend that you do is go in there with a plan. Have a clear set of objectives. What are the things that you'd like to accomplish? If it's your call plan, what are the things you would like to accomplish at the event? How can you spread out each of those things that you want to accomplish based on the number of people that you have on your team that are going to be participating in the event? So what do you want to accomplish? What are your goals and objectives? Look at the agenda. Identify which sessions align with those specific goals and objectives. If you have specific people that you want to meet at the event, write the name of that person down and write the sessions where they may be speaking or the booths where they might be participating. And then have a list of people that you will go out there and figure out how to engage with at the event, either in the session that they're speaking at, session they might participate in because they have needs that are similar to yours, or their specific booth. The next thing I'd recommend that you do is engage in the event application. Many of these events have an application that they'll use. It's a mobile app, and you'll be able to communicate directly with other participants. This is not a let's go pitch kind of thing. Be really clear about why you want to meet with the person. What is it that they're doing that's interesting, that you find interesting? What is it that they're doing that makes you curious about learning more? I can tell you this. If you are curious about learning more in the context of getting to the yes, getting the funding for your internal learning programs or technology programs that you want to bring into your organization, and you'll be at Learning 2024, contact me and say that you want to learn more about that. You're curious about how do I align with business objectives? How do I accelerate empathy with the person who is involved in the decision-making process? How do I leverage story to achieve results? If those things are interesting, those are great reasons to reach out to me for Learning 2024. The cool thing about speakers at each of these events is you can reach out to them directly. You can wait until the end of their talk and go up and shake their hand. You can then provide context. Go into your events with a plan, then go execute that plan. If you are struggling with this, please give me a call. I'm happy to talk with you. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn, or you can connect directly with me on any of the Slack channels that we might both be a part of. If you know of somebody who would find some value out of this, get some benefit out of this discussion, please share it with them. We're really excited about the Leader Lab and really excited about the guided whiteboard sessions. You'll hear more and more about that in all the marketing and the information that we're putting out there. I believe that there's a gap that exists in the marketplace when it comes to leadership. And I believe that we can solve that gap by focusing first on self, building those skills directly. And when we build those skills, we will be better leaders. And if we create better leaders at the front line in our organization, we will put ourselves in a position where we will help our organizations grow, which will help our customers grow, which will in turn help our organizations grow. Our people will thrive, our customers will thrive, our families will thrive. If you know of somebody who finds this valuable, please share it with them. Let me know via LinkedIn or Twitter. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking different about your process? Thank you.